everyone, and welcome to this episode of Culture of Paint. On tonight's show, we're going to take a look at what's caught our eye in the last couple of weeks in the miniatures painting world. For our main topic, we're going to have a bit of a deep dive, a bit of a chat about why we think Space Marines are just so popular to paint, why people enjoy painting them, why we enjoy painting them so much. And then we'll close out the show, as usual, taking a look at what all the hashtag paint cultists have been up to. Culture of Paint is aimed at a mature audience, and therefore we might use explicit language and discuss adult themes. Now let's talk about paint. And we are back on, I think. Let's have a look. Are the chat in there? They are. Everyone's going. Hi, Dan, Duppy, Nigel, evening all. Morning. I know we've got a few Aussies tuning in. Bit of breakfast, very early breakfast viewing. Hello, everyone. I'm Henry. I'm joined, as usual, by this trio of lovely gents, Andy, Rich, and Matt. And we're joined by a bunch of you in the chat tonight, which is nice as well. It's episode 10. We made it to double figures. I mean, that's at least a couple of quid, right? That's legit, right? Now the money rolls in, right? Come on, Spotify. So yeah, 10 episodes. We might have missed a week, but we're not going to worry about that one. Normal format for the show tonight, guys, but we have opened it to the public as opposed to just recording live for the patrons tonight. We want to do that sort of every 4 or 5 shows, see if we can reach a few more people. But it's nice to see some of our regulars in the chats as well. So let's kick it off with the first segment then. Matt, let's get the slides up. What have we seen the last few weeks?
Right.
It's been a lot going on, eh?
First up.
Hey.
Oh, is this new, is it, Rick?
I know, yeah. So unless you've been living under a rock or on Mars, in the last sort of week or so, you will have seen that the new version of AOS is just around the corner. And they've shown these very friendly looking chaps on the preview last week, I think it was. And I instantly fell in love with them and thought they were incredible. Massive hobby buzz, which is something I've been missing of late. So I just got super stoked super quickly, and that's why they're my pick.
Lovely. And this is the Cruel Boys, yeah? Yeah,
the Cruel. Other than I'm not sure about the Cruel Boy thing or them being the clever versions of the Orcs, but they just look fucking awesome. So
they do. They're busy old models, though, mate.
Oh, there's a lot going on.
I mean, that lad's got like 14 heads hanging off him.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be taking a knife to that at some point.
Yeah, I wonder how it goes. Tell you what, it's going to go together in some bizarre way as well, isn't it? I do like the shields on these guys. I like that. That's something they sort of lent into, haven't they?
Throwback.
It's very striking, isn't it? Very sort of like the Blanchett's John Blanche artwork and stuff.
Yeah. That whole release was amazing.
Yeah, that animal's horrible. Whatever he's on.
It's the best model in the world, I reckon.
Hyena badger.
Yeah.
Got very Mordor.
Yeah, I think it's the best in the model as well.
It does, man. It's huge Lord of the Rings.
It's nothing like Lord of the Rings. What do you mean?
I don't know.
I don't think it can be. I don't think it's allowed to be.
Yeah. But no, I love that they're slightly meaner, slightly darker than, say, the Bone Splitters or the Iron Jaws and that kind of thing. Love them a lot.
They're getting...
Yeah, man. The whole swamp vibe is
very
big
cool.
fan of that.
Yeah.
They're getting quite big as well. Like every model.
To the internet. Take a look at the help section.
Hello.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry, my Alexa's been really helpful. Thanks, Alexa.
It's all right. He's made 10 shows without that going on.
Don't get Alexa in your homes, people. It's a Trojan horse. I like how. Is it a bull rush that's on the base? We had the wheat with the.
We did, didn't we? Yeah.
Is that a bull rush?
I think you're right, mate. Yeah.
I'm here for the wheat. I'm here for the bull rushes. Let's get vegetation, different vegetation for each race. I'm into it.
Get some orc farmers.
Yeah,
maybe. Nice. Maybe that's one of the units we haven't seen, right?
It's about the wheat. Love it.
What's that app that's very popular? The farm game.
Oh yeah.
Animal Crossing.
That's it. Maybe GW are going to move into their own take on that.
This is a new animal, in it? So jobs are good then.
Yeah, it's a lovely model. It's a lovely range. I'm sure we're going to be loving it for the next few weeks as it's plastered everywhere. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's always fun getting in on the hype, just riding it.
Oh mate, I jumped on that train. It didn't even. Yeah, I am massively on. I am in first class on that hype train.
You just got an annual pass, haven't you? Like
I'm
just
train.
as soon as the new thing. Yeah, Mr. Marlowe. Oh yeah, come on, all aboard.
Yeah.
Get your wings, butterfly. Here's a new project for you.
Yeah, I'm the new fat controller of the hobby butterfly.
Love it. Could be worse, mate. Could be worse.
There's a
Right.
meat in that.
What's up next, Matt?
Right, next up is, I think it was your pick.
Yeah. So this is the account's Gardens of Hecate. I think that's how you pronounce it. Amazing hobby account. Has been around for a long time now. I think I first came across them 5 or 6 years ago now. Very original style of painting. And this was their take on the recent Vampire release. I think we've seen a lot of particularly content creators seem to have been painting this particular vampire model. And this is, I mean, hands down my favorite interpretation of it. If you like that grimdark side of things, but perhaps a different take on your classic grimdark, I'd really recommend going and checking out this account. They've done some absolutely brilliant work. The reason I said is I'm not entirely sure if it's just one person, Anna, or if it's a group of them. But there's some great tutorials on the site. Fantastic miniature photography as well, really atmospheric, all in this sort of vibe. I remember they jumped on Age of Sigmar very early on with that sort of, this is a cool setting, but want it to be darker. Let's create it and make it darker. So yeah, big fan. And Rich, I know obviously a month ago the hype train was very, vampiric and necromantic.
Yeah,
I think I'm still on that one at the minute. The Cruel Boys haven't pulled me off that yet, but we will see.
Yeah, I'm still in two minds. I still love them, and I'll still do some of them. But them, I've kind of got an army, so I can just cherry pick. Whereas this is the first time I'll be like, I'm going to start a new army. Like
tune in 2 weeks' time.
This week's dream.
Yeah.
Cruel Boys.
What's the meme, whatever it is, with Morgan Freeman's voice comes in? And Rich did not collect the army.
Straight into the storage.
I hope you do, mate. This is reverse psychology.
I'll show you, boys. You watch.
Yeah, I'll watch.
But yeah, what's up next, Matt? Whose pick have we got next?
So this was my pick. I was just flicking through some Tolkien hashtags, and this popped up. The OSL just kind of really struck me, how he sort of painted the light of the door opening pretty spot on. Like it's really good. You see the video on his account, it's much better, but yeah, bit of Hobbit, can't really go wrong. Well, not for me anyway.
Are they miniatures in the circle then?
Yeah. So he's done it's like a backdrop, and then you've got the miniatures and then the door, but you can't see around the miniature. I'm not entirely sure. It's the same company that does the bigger Gandalf that we had on one of the other shows. I will find and put a link in the description. But yeah, they're a bit bigger than I think GW miniatures.
Right.
It's nice.
Do you know what I really like about this is normally when people do something like this, they take a photo just of the miniatures or the actual piece itself to give it that kind of effect, but he's still got his hands in it and it still looks really good.
It's candid and it still works, right? It's not all set up. Yeah, that's grand.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. That's a good account as well. That well worth a follow. That as usual, I'll stick all the accounts that we mentioned during the show. I'll stick them in the description for when this is sort of published, as it were. Because what we try and do is not show each other what we've picked and stuff before each show, so there's a bit of surprise. So I can't do it beforehand. But yeah, if I don't, please bug me, as some of you have done. It helps a lot. Yeah, I think Lord of the Rings there's so many nice dioramas, aren't there? Little vignettes, dioramas that are done around Lord of the Rings. It's such the sort of archetypal Western fantasy thing, isn't it? It's hard not to. What are the on the right? There's like a bunch of flowers and a fern and something.
Yeah.
As we looked at, that's physical, is it, or is it painted? No, it's physical.
Yeah, it's
Is
physical.
it all? Is the inside all physical?
The
or is it
inside's all physical, yeah.
Right.
But he's done it to like the perspective, so the map obviously gets bigger as it gets closer to you and smaller as it gets, which is pretty cool. Like doing that is pretty clever. I wouldn't know how to do that.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. Yeah, nice one. Again, you said he's got a video of it as well.
Yeah, just of the turning it around, and you don't really lose the perspective, which is pretty good. So it doesn't work from just one angle. That's pretty nice.
Adam in the chat says he thinks he uses the old Mithril 54mm stuff. So that is
for the knowledge.
It's good to know. So I'll have a search out for that. See if I can get the link to that one as well. Jot that down. Mithril.
54, the greatest scale.
Bring back 54.
I think everyone is, mate, aren't they? It's just scale creep until we get there.
Yeah, we got there early, mate.
Yeah, I know. Hipsters.
Well, G-dubs are going that way.
Surely not. No, lovely. It's a lovely little spread for our what's sort of caught our eye this last few weeks. What's up next, Matt? I think we're moving straight into the main topic. Yeah. So this topic, guys, was a bit of a flippant comment, really. It came out of one. We'd been chatting or episode ideas and what to do, and then we sort of said, "Oh, I want to, appeal to people, but we don't want to pander to it. Like, we should do a Space Marines episode." And then, so after laughing it off for a bit, thought about it a little bit more, and there's no two ways about it. If you are into painting miniatures, there's a very, very good chance you've painted a Space Marine at some point, right? Even if you painted one and then you've gone, this is not for me. You've gone to large scale, or you've gone to whatever. So what I wanted to do really tonight was pick your guys' brains about why do we think they are so popular beyond simply Games Workshop tend to tell their stories from, with Marines as the protagonists, and often the games come out with Marines. They're a well-supported miniatures range, but other than the sort of poster boy, whatever people say with regards to that, what more is there to them that makes them so fun to paint, so good to paint, so fun to collect, and have been for 30 plus years now, or whatever. So I split it down into a couple of categories. And now I'm going to grill these guys about it, and feel free in the chat as well, join in. One of the reasons we wanted to open this one up to you is, it's a subject I think a lot of people will have an opinion on. So let's dive in with the first one, Matt. Right. So the first thing I figured was artwork. Right. We've got 30, let's call it 35 years. It's something like that of Marine artwork. And that's not just from your GW rule books, but that's now expanded right out into video game artwork, obviously novel series and whatnot. I asked the guys to pick a few of their favourite bits. This one's come up from mine. What is it do we think about artwork that helps sell the miniatures, I guess? What is there a link? Is it irrelevant? What do you think?
It helps you get involved in the universe, doesn't it? So anything that kind of, just really gets you into that and imagine it. Because at the end of the day, they are just little models. And if you're new to the hobby or whatever, like, how do you get yourself really involved and work out actually what's going on? And you look at a couple bits of art and you don't need to read anything. I don't read anything. But if you look at some bits of art, you're like, this is what 40k is. That's cool. And I think it's gone on for so many years. That's why 40k is so successful, really, because it's just got this deep IP. Lots of art styles. There's got to be something that grabs someone's attention, right?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely something in what you said there about the styles as well, right? Because, I've got a good group of hobby mates, and one of them's a touch older than the rest of us. I'm a very big fan of the original Warhammer 40,000, and that's sort of we think of it as quite cheesy 80s artwork, but that's the Marines he loves. That's how he likes to
their box art.
Earlier than that, so the real sort of when it was really unfleshed out. All of them were beakies, They all were like slightly weird poses.
It's probably cheesier, isn't it? Because it's like that bold yellow and red, you know, than like Rogue Trader art. Just those two covers I'm talking about.
And I think you've got, you know, as you go through those editions, you've got so many, as you say, different interpretations and styles of artwork. But again, they all focus around the Marine as the protagonist in them. So, you know, it's not like you're coming to something and you don't really like the look of it. Oh, well, that's a shame, I'll move on. There's every chance if you don't like the look of that piece of Marine artwork, you'll find a piece that you do.
Yeah.
That inspires you. And I mean, Andy, you work predominantly off artwork, right? That's your major inspiration, right? Well, often for GW pieces, isn't it?
Definitely gets you going. I think it's just, you know, how do you get immersed in this? And there's different ways to do it. But I definitely think the pick, like, you know, a lot of people into the novels, and I've not read one book that's to do with. I think I read 3 pages of the first Heresy novel. Was that this or no? But the art, just I feel like I know everything I need to know about 40k, and and it fills it in and allows you to get immersed in that world, and that's probably why it's so successful, right?
I think so. There's a nice. Who's made the comment there? Volumes. I've just read it. Where are we? Michael saying he thinks a part of it is that with all the art we have, there's this huge amount of examples of how to paint or highlight the models, albeit 2D artwork. It gives you an idea, right, of the shapes of the model, what they're meant to represent, you know, what they look like. You know, if you think of something completely the opposite end of the scale, something like Tyranids, so, you know, a proper biological alien form, there's nowhere near as much artwork, is there, to give you something to go on, something to cling to. And, you know, we are, as everything with these shows, we're talking about this from a painting point of view. It's all going to come back to that, but I do think this background and things like that, they have an impact, the artwork. You know, everyone's got that favorite bit of artwork, right? And you know what I've asked these guys for. What's on the next slide, Matt? I think it'd be some other picks.
Yep.
This is me.
Badass.
Yeah, so there we go. Completely different style, right? You know, if you looked at the Alpha Legion Marine from the previous one, you know, he's striding along. Oh, this thin guy looks like a good guy, right? You know, all the people are bowing down to him, blah blah blah. Then you look at this guy and you're like, oh, he must be a baddie. It's got to be a baddie, right? It's got menacing all over him, but not at all, right? Well, depending on
best goodies.
This
Flash
is
terrors, almost the best goodies, second best goodies. Yeah, so for me, I picked this just because it's completely to agree with what you said. Just the quantity of existing artwork. If you were new to the hobby and someone showed you a Space Marine, if you didn't like the first few images that you showed, I guarantee that you would eventually find something that you did. And I picked this because I've not been in the hobby for as long as some people, and I still look at. The second ed stuff doesn't really do much for me or mean much to me because I wasn't really in it then. But I like the fact that even now, this picture's maybe a few years old. There's artwork still being produced that is still inspiring people to want to paint the miniatures. So it's not just the stuff that's gone before from years and years and years ago. Even now, they're still creating different styles of artwork, but they're creating artwork that you know, inspires me and I imagine other people as well to pick up a paintbrush and paint them.
I think so, and I think that sheer volume of artwork, there's a lot of ambiguity, right, with Space Marines. You know, there's a lot of areas of grey in the sense of who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, you know, this, that, and the other. And I think if you're not necessarily somebody who is particularly imaginative, right, or you're not necessarily, maybe the hobby, that isn't something that you're necessarily desperate to expand on, right, is your imagination. What you prefer to do is the physical act of painting, you know, and all. You see a piece of artwork and you get off on trying to copy that piece of artwork, right? That's your hobby. Again, it's just this massive amount of inspiration that you can use from it. Yeah. You know, it's I wonder how I paint Marines. Well, you know, here we go. You know, let's bring out, you know, these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of artwork to give you an idea. I think as well, one thing that artwork probably gives us over the miniatures, over the background, whatever like that. I think it can give you a sense of scale in the sense of what these guys are. These are supermen.
Yeah.
And perhaps when you're only, particularly with the older Marines, when they were the same size as, all the baddies, when they were the same size as a guardsman, or I suppose it's human and things like that. Perhaps that got lost occasionally.
Mm.
I think less so with the newer models, but in the artwork, you've always got that imposing sort of sense from them, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's strange because for me, like, they've been around for such a long time, but there is a lot of the old work that I don't particularly enjoy that much. Like some of the older stuff, like you said, when they're the same size, that doesn't. Like there's I can't remember what artwork it is, but there's some artwork where there's some blood angels, and there's one that's got a blonde hair, and they are literally the exact same height as like the guardsman that they're stood next to, and it's proper cheesy style of 80s style. He's got like a crew cut and
nice.
That sort of stuff doesn't do it for me whatsoever. This newer stuff where you see the scale of the guy, like the size of the head comparative to the rest of him, it's so imposing. The older artwork for me isn't particularly imposing, and that's what I like about the Marines that they've got these days, is that they are giant superhumans, and it makes me want to put paint to a model, because that scale and that imposingness I think is really cool.
Yeah, it is big time. Have we got any more artwork clips, Matt? We do. Oh, yes. Here we go. Now we're farming. So whose pick was this? Was this yours, Matt?
This was mine, yeah. So whenever I think 40k, this is pretty much the first thing that pops to my head. It's
this one in particular, or that classic
this
piece
in particular.
Right.
Did you get in on third then?
Yeah, so this third ed was when I got into the hobby. This was the front cover of the rule book, and it was the box that was in the window. So it's just a real kind of a nostalgia kick for me. Like, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of all of John Blanche's stuff. Like some of it, I just can't get on with. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. But like stuff like this, the sort of is a group of Marines. You can't really see any enemies or anything like that, and it's just they're their last stand sort of style, which is a lot of the art that I like, that kind of last stand thing. But yeah, it's a
very popular motif, isn't it, for Marines?
Yeah,
like that last stand thing. But again, I guess it goes back to that idea of, I guess it's much easier, right, I assume it's much easier for people to try and imagine themselves in this environment, in this world, if you think of yourself as a superhero, right? You're not necessarily going to think of yourself as a space elf or an orc or whatever like that. Yes, I guess like when you play video games, typically you tend to play, the characters that you sort of aspire, I guess, to. If you were in that situation, you'd aspire to be like. I'm not suggesting anyone should aspire to be like a Space Marine, incidentally. It's terrible. They're awful, terrible people. But I think that superhero angle, and we just get it reinforced time and time again. Or you go completely opposite end, right? And you go, I don't want to be the heroes, always like playing the baddies. Well, have you seen Chaos Space Marines? You can be the ultimate mustache twirling evildoer, and again, you're still staying within that Marine bubble. You could paint and hobby till the end of your hobby time just with Marines, right?
And many do.
Exactly, and you wouldn't need to repeat yourself too often. And I think therein lies one of the biggest sort of reasons they're so popular. It's that breadth, right? And we're sort of saying it in a bunch of different ways, even just touching on the artwork. But it's that the sheer breadth of sort of source material, and you want to paint your chapter like this, go for it. You don't know what to do, okay, well, why don't you look at that one? Great, go and paint that one. We just don't see that with other ranges. I suppose you've got historical miniatures, right, which to a large degree you need to paint a certain way, you need to collect them in a certain way. If you're going to pursue that as a competitive thing where you're painting those display pieces. Accuracy is going to be really important.
Count your rivets.
That's a completely legitimate hobby, but it's and some people like to do that with Marines. I particularly enjoy Horus Heresy and things like that, and there is more of an element of that in it. But then equally, just within Marines, you can go completely the opposite end and have these absolutely bizarre, walking churches almost. Some of them can be.
I think one of the things in this, I'm not trying to get too deep on the subject, but they kind of cover the breadth of human.
Do it.
Like they cover the breadth of us as people. You've got the super demigod good guys that are literally saving the universe in their. This is their equivalent. Like the Last Stand is their equivalent of the superhero landing. It's what they all do.
Right.
All they do is go and do last stands in places.
Yeah.
And then that's like the good side. So that's like if you want to be all you can be and save the world, or if you don't and you want to be the worst version of yourself, you can do that as well. I think that's what makes them so fascinating, is that they are
heroes.
They are heroes or villains to the greatest degree. If they're bad, they're not just bad, they're the worst. If they're good, they're not just good, they are like exemplary. And I think as people, we kind of tap into that. We find it interesting to see one way or the other where people will go to if they've got the option. That's why people love like bad guys and superheroes, and that's why that's been a thing forever.
That's it, right?
It just clicks with us on like an innate level of we want to see what we'll do in certain sort of scenarios.
Yeah, there's a very good chance, right? Any book you read, 40k book you read, or whatever, or piece of artwork, the hero is going to be a Marine, or the villain is going to be a Marine. So there's that, and that's been not drummed into you because it's not forced upon you. That is the setting, and I think, I'm not particularly well versed in other sci-fi settings, but let's just take a quick look at things like say Star Wars, right? That's a popular miniatures game now. That has got an absolute ton of novels and things that go along with the films. It's got a huge amount of lore. When you think about Star Wars, it's the majority again of the characters are quite easy to identify with, aren't they? In the sense, if you've got usually the Jedi is usually the good guy, right? And they're usually a human, or the famous ones are, right? And again, the bad guys tend to be humans, but exaggerated humans. And I'm sure it must just come down to that idea of it's much easier for us as viewers or as consumers of the setting to identify with those, those characters. The only Star Wars thing I can think of that wasn't human, other than Yoda, was that
Jar Jar.
The floopy haired thing.
He did nothing wrong.
Right.
Sidious.
That's a controversial statement.
But even me as someone who's very much a casual fan of that genre, like I could probably name maybe even 10 like human, Jedi / bad Jedi guys.
But you are right. We do look for ourselves in anything. When we read fantasy books, when we read about main characters, when we watch movies or TV series, we try and we look for ourselves in these characters, good and or bad. And I think it just it makes us more. It makes us buy into them a lot more, I think.
Do you think that because they are humans, like they are, they're a human form, they are the same as a human, it's easier for a person to see themselves as that
100%
model? Like you can't 100%. See yourself as a Tyranid, for example. Like you'll never get a book from the point of a Tyranid because they don't speak English.
I think that's 100% true. Yeah, and especially if you're a younger fan, if you specifically for the I don't know, the classical cliche of what a hobbyist could be. If you're a younger person like I was when I was doing it, who potentially been bullied and stuff in the past, you see these fantastic demigods that are able to do what they want when they want, and you try you are drawn to that sort of thing because it's not your reality and it's taking the place of your reality.
Escapism almost.
100%. And when you escape, you want to see yourself in it because it is an escape. You don't want to escape to a world which is exactly the same as this one because that'd be boring as shit.
That's why Imperial Guard are awful.
So
true.
not to go off on a tangent, and this is definitely something I'd love us to discuss on future shows. But Simone in the chat has said that's why for so many years they had a hard time being even remotely interested in Marines, because as a female she found it quite hard to picture herself being in that setting. You know, and I mean, hopefully what we're seeing, you know, now with a much greater range, you know, of diversity within GW's setting, you know, hopefully in 10 years time, you know, that then people can look back and go, oh, I've got 10 plus years of fantastic background for someone I could identify with and whatnot within that setting. But I think that's undoubtedly going to be a cause of it, right? Because it's, I keep coming back to this 30 plus years, right, of this. There's not many other settings. There's not many other, in fact I don't think there's any other armies, races, whatever in this setting that have that volume, right, of background and paintings to draw inspiration from. Let's go straight into the background, Matt, because I felt it was we sort of talked around it when we've been chatting about this as well, but the reason I felt like background was worth having a chat about is it's just like how Andy doesn't, you know, you're not a reader when it comes to, you know,
anything
GW novels or whatever. Yeah,
I was going to say that.
Show notes. But it's there's people who perhaps are the opposite way around, right? Who, you know, they love getting drawn into the background. It's not necessarily the artwork that does it for them. It's this particular story, or even, you know, if we go back 10, 20 years, you know, the little text box that used to be in the codexes and things like that. So Rich, what made you pick this particular thing when we sort of talked about background?
So you picked the Alpha Legion book. That book, Legion, is my favorite Horus Heresy book, and probably my favorite Warhammer novel. Because I find the Alpha Legion absolutely fascinating. That whole good versus evil, are they good, are they not? I think it's probably the most interesting story in the Warhammer world. And I love this army specifically because I think that it really lends to that story, because Miggs has done a fantastic job with these miniatures, because you could play it either way. They could be loyalists, they could be evil. Most of the models are made from loyalist Marines, which have been obviously heavily converted and painted really well. And just as an army to look at as a really big, really cool army. It's got so much theme, so much story to it. I picked it because it's in my pro top 3 armies that I've seen for modern Space Marines. And I think it tells a great story, and you could look at it if you didn't know anything about the story or didn't know anything about Alpha Legion. You could look at it and go, God, they're really cool. They're really cool painted miniatures, and they look great on a table. It's a great army. But I think if you know a bit more of the background, then you can look at it a bit more as they're Alpha Legion. Are they good? Are they bad?
Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm with you. So you're saying that actually, rather than using necessarily the background as a direct. So let's say we take a picture that we really like, a Marine picture, and we effectively copy it. Copy's not the word I'm looking for, but I think you know what I'm getting at when I say that. What you're suggesting here with the background is that what it actually does is adds layers of interest to the army without it being directly sort of shoved in your face. It's not saying, here's this last stand diorama that I've copied. You know, I hate saying copied. Andy, what word am I looking for? It's not
influenced by.
That's the one. What you're saying here is if you just like pretty looking things, Miggs's army is immense. Yeah. If you dig the background, Miggs's army goes from an 11 out of 10 to billion million.
Yeah, and it does both of those things, and that's just by the nature of the fact that it's Marines. It's obviously a massive amount of the fact of what Miggs has done to it, but the fact that he picked Alpha Legion and the fact that he picked a Marine army. That's a massive part of it, and that just shows, it adds to the amount of things that there are for Alpha Legion for Marines to sort of influence you to paint them and to want to pick them up and paint them.
Yeah, oh man, this is obviously going to be an absolutely awful show because this was a spoiler in the sense of we all love Marines. So this is going to be awful for us from a sense of trying to. By the end of this show, Rich won't even remember what a cruel boy looks like.
I'll have started.
We'll have started
Legion Army.
a new army for that. What's up on the next slide, Matt?
Marines.
Here we are. So when I brought up background, this was sort of what I had in my mind. I mentioned how I particularly enjoy the Horus Heresy series, and Forge World did a big series of books on these, almost looking at that storyline from a faux historical standpoint. So you've got your disposition of forces, you've got different color plates. Before that, there was the Bad Ab Wars books, which in my opinion is still the best books Forge World ever done. But what it was our first look at getting to see this much detail about a Marine chapter. And what it meant was you could read a little snippet of background that really inspired you. And rather than that snippet having nothing to go along with it, all of a sudden you would get all the details about, or let's say the pertinent details about that particular chapter. So if you really wanted to deep dive, if that's how you get off on your hobby, it's not so much copying the artwork, it's not so much based on a story, it's right, I'm going to recreate this fake historical force, and I'm going to enjoy the accuracy that's sort of involved with that, or I'm going to enjoy replicating these particular engagements. And again, so let's say you've come from a historicals or a military modeling sort of hobby. Well, here's another way Marines can draw you in. You're coming in, you think automatically, oh, they'll go with the Imperial Guardsmen or something like that. Well, hang on, have you seen, let's have a look at this slide here, the Raptors. There is literally a Marine for everyone, isn't there, in that sense? And I felt like when Forge World, it was what perhaps had been missing with the main GW line of publications. They'd lent so heavily into this incredible Baroque Gothic artwork, style, but Forge World were able to jump in and take a much sort of cleaner, sort of scientific almost look at it, and they could just tick those boxes for hobbyists as well. And again, there isn't, other than the Forge World books that focus particularly on the Imperial Guard stuff and the Inquisition, there's not that stuff really out there for the other armies in the setting. So yeah, I think it was just sort of circling back around again, repeating ourselves, is the sheer volume and how easy it is to immerse yourself, right? Hobby's about forgetting real life for a while, right? It's sort of, just enjoying. And Marines make that very easy, regardless of where you find your inspiration from, I think is what I was getting at with that one.
Great chapters on there. Sons of Medusa, Raptors, the Shark Marines, Lamenters.
And some bad ones like Howling Griffins. Ugh.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'd love to try that scheme, man.
No.
The old quarter.
Give me the Tiger Claws.
Forward scheme. Yeah, it's a nice one. Don't see many orange Marines, do you?
They're yellow, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, Tiger Claws, I've never seen them. They're awesome. Red Scorpions, see, that's salt in the wound seeing them, because that transfer sheet, 200 quid on eBay.
That killed that project dead, right?
Yeah.
Instantly.
I love Sons of Medusa, though, and I think Kirill Knieve does them, which is mental.
Does he? That's cool.
Yeah. Really worth
checking. I like
out.
Raptors. Everyone does Raptors, but I like them. They're gritty and
they're your Spec Ops Marines, aren't they? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you like that, and funnily enough, you particularly enjoy historical and military modelling.
I like the regular Marines. I think that I think that's what's cool is you can do that complete style flip, right? Because you can do like super clean edge highlight style, but then you can do the gritty look, and yeah, like you said, it just appeals to different types of hobbyists. And I like that Forge World do that style, and obviously you got people like Phil who paint in that amazing way, and it's so cool to see that. It actually was really cool at that time when the Forge World style was really distinct from G-Dub, and Phil was doing those amazing takes, and that was really cool time.
Yeah, big time. So I think that sort of wraps up the background and the artwork section. Sort of safe to say that there's something for everyone, and there's probably more than just one thing for that person to to deep dive on and enjoy. And then I suppose the flip side of that is if you want to be completely special snowflake and do something no one else has done, there's plenty of room for that too. It really is. There's so much choice. Personally, and actually, Adam in the chat has just sort of said, "Oh, there's too many things to choose. There's too many legions." I agree with him. Sometimes I can get that it's almost paralyzing the amount of choice. And if you're sort of butterfly minded, like I think a lot of hobbyists are, it can be very hard to see it, to even get through a tactical squad before you think, oh, hang on, that Marine chapter's quite cool as well, or maybe I want to do something from those Marines.
I realistically think I've painted 50 Marines from different chapters, different legions. Honestly, not even taking the piss, I generally think probably about 50, including homebrew ones that I've made up.
I don't know if I've hit 10. I reckon under 10. I'm going to count in my head.
Everyone loves a Marine.
And you're not allowed to count like slightly different takes on Blood Angels as.
No, Blood Angels is one. Space Force, Fists, Dark Angel, quite standard ones. I think I need to branch out and do some. I'm reading off the screen. Tiger Claws for the YouTube channel. There you go. I have to do a Tiger Claw.
So Matt, let's move on the slides. So now I wanted us to have a chat, perhaps a little bit more about the stuff we're actually working with and actually painting. Not to say that some people's hobby isn't 2D artwork and animation and whatnot. There's some really cool accounts I've been finding on Instagram of people, particularly digital artists now, doing just like either whether it's is it Artist Empire, I think it's called on Twitter. They take your pictures of your models and then they'll do a load of digital art around them. So they, a lot like the Forge World books, where they look on a barrel. Yeah. And then at the flip side, you've got people doing artwork like that picture Rich shows earlier of that Terminator. You've got people making up their own characters and then commissioning an artist to do a drawing of that, which is super cool. But no, I wanted to talk a bit more about the models themselves, and I suppose from our experiences, particularly when it comes to teaching painting, whether in person or online or whatever, and competition painting, all that sort of thing, why they're so good to paint. To forget all of the subjective background, artwork, all of that, purely objectively, what makes Marines so damn good? Why do we think they're so damn good to paint? So go on, Andy, you can kick this one off. I chose this pick just because I think it's one of the best stereotypical tactical Marine models.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
What model's this?
So this is from the Space Marine Heroes set that came out a few years ago. There were those little foily packets.
I think
Japanese
I want
ones.
And the really lovely thing about these, so these are the most recent sculpts of the mini Marines, of the original Marines.
Yeah.
And they have slightly different proportions to the older stuff. Do you remember how when the Death Watch came out, they had slightly, they were a little bit more upright, legs a bit closer together. That sort of thing.
You're looking for is bigger eyes, I think.
Bigger eyes. So these guys were not Primaris bigger eyes, just a little bit bigger eyes.
So the bases as well, they just added little bits to it. Like the Terminators, they've done them as well. They're just ever so slightly bigger.
Well, I just noticed on that, is that a thumbprint or a print line?
Print line.
Right, that's not so bad then. But yeah, so hit me. Why is it, we've run a lot of classes now, and when we run brush skills, we run it on a Marine, don't we?
Yeah, I was thinking about this all day today, actually. I think as we were doing this tonight, and I was thinking about how I spent years painting Marines and then went on to paint other models, and you can just paint other models. And I think what's really cool about Marines is they are way less intimidating to paint than so many other things. And I think what's really important to have in our hobby is make stuff to bring down the barriers to entry. I talk about barriers to entry to the hobby quite a bit, but there's the money investment, difficulty, and all this stuff. But I just can't imagine my first model having things like fur, skin, different types of weapon, all those things that could be on, like, I don't know, an AOS figure or something like that, and that's just a lot to learn. But if you can base coat cleanly on a Marine and do a little highlight, it's going to look cool, and that's far less to learn than some other models. And I do think it's important to have easy figures to paint. And yeah, I think it takes a while to master the base coat, to be honest, does it not? And just this is blue with a bit of red. I think just getting that right to start with is quite tricky. So let alone have loads of skin and things in like that. So yeah, I just think Marines are super important to get new people into the hobby, and the easier it is, the better, basically. And I think you can learn all the fundamental skills, can't you? If we talk about different styles, like edge highlighting is one style, blending is another style, painting with light sources, OSL, you can learn all of those things on a Marine, and it's easier because the shapes are easier. So if you start by mastering those core skills on a simple miniature, then you could take it to a more complex miniature whenever you feel ready. And certainly for me, I think I just painted Marines and got better at blending just doing those, and it was good to just learn those things on a simple model first. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, they do in. I know what you're saying about them largely being sort of armor and that, but I suppose in a way that's also can bring a challenge, right? In that it's relatively easy to do a smooth coat of paint and even a simple blend on a very small area, right? But actually, if you can do it on the whole of the leg on the Marine, right, or the helmet, or shoulder pads, right? People always struggle with shoulder pads for whatever reason. That's actually going to stand you in really good stead, because there's not, on a lot of other models, generally there aren't as many areas of a smooth sort of large surface, are there, like that. And then to go with that is a lot of the Marine models do a very good job of just slightly introducing you to a different texture, right? Maybe they haven't got a helmet on. Maybe they've got a little, furry merkin or whatever it is the Space Forces have got going on. Things like that, tassels, all that sort of stuff.
There's more scope, isn't it, really? So, like, if you're a beginner, you can do them in a simple way and they'll look good. And then you can go to town and go as mental as you want. Whereas I do think it's more difficult to have that span of interpretations on some figures. Like, I think no matter how you do it, skin's going to be tricky, right? If you've got like a topless barbarian, it's going to be tricky. I think no matter what, whereas if you rattle can a Marine and then blocking the other details, it'll look pretty decent, I reckon. So I think that's
also the way that the model as well, that when you look at things like leather and skin and stuff, the edges and the details tend to be a lot sort of smoother and a lot less defined, a lot less dramatic. Big chunky power armor, you've got some big old square edges that are so much easier to highlight neatly than a cloak or a fur thing or a bit of skin. Like I'd imagine we can all remember the first time when we've done an edge highlight on a Marine and gone, oh my god, that is crisp, and you were super happy about it. But the model, the way that it's made, lends to that, because they are chunky, they have got those edges that do make it easier. So I think it also you can see the progress a lot easier. So even just through one Marine, if you start one end and finish on the other, if you've absolutely nailed the edge highlights on one part of it, it's very visible and it's very instantly gratifiable that you've made that progress on a model.
That's it, isn't it? It's what you've both sort of said then is you can finish a Marine pretty quick. Yeah. And it's that little positive feedback thing. Okay, well, it's not brilliant, but I've finished him. Okay, let's try the next one. Yeah. Just to draw attention, the chat's been enjoying, Matt. I think they're still on some of that Sith chat from earlier. Just saying how you're channeling a bit of that at the minute. Quite sinister at the moment. If your light's gone off, mate,
you'll be all right. I need to put a bulb in the main one. Don't have one.
It's okay. Don't worry about
it. Might make a really good Sith Lord. He's Dark Horse.
What's your man called?
I don't think you're plotting. I think you're all right. But so I guess let's just before we move on. Actually, we can ping the next slide up anyway, Matt. I think it's just a bunch of different Marine sort of pictures.
Yes.
What was if you can remember, what was your first Marine model?
Mine.
Yeah, any of you.
My first Marine model was the Dark Angels Veterans in metal with plastic arms that you got 2 of in the blister pack.
Nice.
It was, for me, it was the start painting set. You know, you got your 5 paints and a brush, your clippers, and like a couple of dudes. It was I've still got it up there. It's the Marine that's basically the sergeant, and he's just like that, or like that.
Yeah, the classic right arm,
Yeah.
right angle.
Single mold.
Yeah. What about you, Andy?
Mine was the bike. I was going to reach.
Oh yeah.
So I embarrassed myself and not reach the box.
Our lovely friend Sam fished that out. He didn't a while ago.
But it makes me laugh so much that those bikes have just been replaced.
So they got a box of them over there.
Yeah, and that was the funniest thing was when they did the box, the mystery box, and it was the old bikes. I was just like, that's the first one I've ever seen that comes in a mystery box. That was unbelievable, Jeff. But yeah, so Marine bike, and then I don't know when I got the 2nd edition box, but I've still got the box that I got. All the Marines are gone from it, but yeah, I've got the 2nd ed box from Toy Master, I think.
Immense.
Not even a G-Dub, Toy Master.
Immense.
Good time.
Going on the chat, Matt Baker, yes. Lehman Russ with the 2 wolves, classic metal mini. You've just reminded me. I told a mate of mine I dig that out, and he could have that. I completely forgot.
An actual model. There was the Lehman Russ model.
Yeah,
ancient, mate. Yeah, ancient.
So
There was yeah.
You like that?
No, that's your blue man. Either Marnius or I think it was Marnius Skalgard. Yeah, sat on his toilet. But yeah, they did a Lehman Russ, which is just basically looks a bit like Ragnar, and he's just got 2 walls. But yeah, it's a lovely one.
What was yours, Tilo?
Oh, I can't remember, mate. It's freaking absolutely ages ago. Probably Dark Angels. But I can't, the Marine model that I can remember from being a kid was that Sergeant Centurious Legion of the Damned model. It was like
holding the skull.
Store opening, but I can't really remember. So my army when I was a kid, I was Chaos Space Marines. So I had a fully painted Iron Warriors army as a 12, whatever it was.
Well, nothing's changed, does it?
Pure goth.
That was where we go with it. But what we got, Emery. Oh, good buddy Emery in the chat. Nice to see you there, buds. Metal Chaos Terminators. Yeah. Oh God.
I've got the blister of that. I might be able to read.
I think he painted him acid green and yellow. Nice. So subtle.
Very.
Love it. But again, this is it, right? I think what we said at the very top. A lot of people, that's the model they have. Marines are often that first model, and as Matt said, you go into G-Dub. I want to get into painting. Do you like sci-fi or do you like fantasy? I like sci-fi. Right, here you go. Here's a box of Marines and some paint. So there's no getting away from that has an impact. But I wanted us to sort of try and talk about other stuff that would have the impact. So the last couple of slides have been of Intercessors. So the most modern iteration we have of a Space Marine line trooper.
Yeah,
and I'm not interested in talking about where they fitted in the lore and all the rest of it, but again, it must be got to be close to the 10th version of what's effectively a tactical Marine, right? In the time we've had GW. You've got other ranges now that are just catching up, where their core troop type, in some cases, is a 15-year-old model, if not older. So easy, right?
But they got new upgrade sprues, so it's fine.
Don't even start. Devastated.
But we're seeing it. With the orcs that are coming out soon, they're getting what are effectively new boys models, just called something slightly different. I'm sure when the Eldar get their time in the sun, we'll see some, that. But again, it's that if you love being into something and you want to keep enjoying painting it, well, constantly having new things to paint is exciting, right?
Yeah.
It's why bother looking elsewhere? By the time I finish this set of Marines, I might have some new Marines that I can paint in a different way or the same way. I think also helps that objectively, you know, they take everything that was good from a painting standpoint, right, of the original Tactical Marine, and just make it bigger.
Yes, makes it easier as well. If you're newer at it, the size of it makes it a lot easier.
That's what I was fishing for. So yeah. Exactly right. It's just easier to paint, and if it's easier to, it's fun to paint, and if you're enjoying painting it, you'll paint more of them.
Yeah. So I went from painting a Marine to, I think there's a Death Corps of Krieg fella I started putting together, and I just couldn't get over the size difference. Just the thought process of that, and there was some Gene Stealer cults I had as well. And even someone who's, you know, is doing as much painting as me, I picked up the Gene Stealer cult. I was like, oh god, this is going to be a bit of work. Whereas a Marine, it's bigger, but it's still easier to paint because it just gives you that freedom to make mistakes, to try new things. The size is a massive factor of it.
Are they the easiest models to paint from Games Workshop?
I think they are. They're a bit like chess. It's really easy to learn how to play it, but it's really hard to get good at it. So like,
the chat is having a very similar convo to you two.
Yeah.
In a slightly different way. But yeah, the argument of, are they, because they're so simple, do they lack creativity, or do they therefore allow for huge amounts of creativity?
I'm massively in the
camp this way, yeah.
Yeah, I'm massively in the camp of, you know, you could paint. I love the fact that you could paint them, you could rattle can them and wash them, and they'll look pretty cool. Or you could spend 6 months painting one, and it'll look fantastic. That's why I picked this one that Rich did, because it's an intercessor. But look what you can do with it if you put the time in. You know, I'm a massive fan of intercessors that have been painted grim dark or painted really quickly. I think they look really cool. But I'm also a massive fan of taking the simplest Marine model that there is. I think it's even one of the easy build ones, and putting in a shitload of time and effort into it to make it look amazing.
I think what a sort of a thing that maybe gets overlooked with the Space Marines, and like why they're like, people always say they're bland and boring, but like it's kind of almost personal taste as well. But the Space Marines, I think a lot of the time, are the way they are from more of a business perspective. It's hobby retention. Like I've seen people come into Games Workshops, buy a crap ton of, you know, orcs or nids or whatever. First time they're in the hobby, they get really like disheartened with how they're painting them, because they are a bit more difficult, and then quit, gone.
Yeah.
If you That's what I was saying earlier with the barriers. Right?
Yeah.
So okay, so let's just touch then just succinctly, what is more difficult about painting those other things then?
I think surfaces, textures. It's if you haven't started, or you don't understand the sort of some of the techniques to do those initially, you do get disheartened. Like, it's not how you think it looks in your head. And like what Andy said, like the barrier is a lot lower on them to get into the hobby, get that little like what was it, buzz in your head of, yeah, I've painted something really cool. And you know, they're a perfect, from a business point of view, a perfect hobby retention like tool. They keep people in the hobby because they're a bit easier to paint.
And is that why they did Stormcast Eternals, do you think, to bring that side to AOS, to bring those elements of Space Marines to the fantasy side of it? And I think that's I think definitely as a business decision, but I don't see that as a negative thing.
No.
I think that's cool that they can recruit more hobbyists. I think that's really cool. So good on them for making things slightly more accessible.
If you paint a Marine and you say copy an heavy metal guide or the artwork on a box, you know, even if it's not as neat, it's not going to be a million miles away, because the heavy metal style for the Marines is actually pretty simple. It's insanely deep, like neat, but it is actually a pretty simple technique. Whereas if you were to, for instance, like the model that I showed at the start of the show, that guy, the orc on the werewolfy thing.
I agree, totally. Yeah.
Like if you were to start and you gave someone new that model and said, "Cool, try and paint it like that," you wouldn't stand a chance.
I mean, it was quite interesting, wasn't it? With when you think of that sort of the ease of painting, like you're saying there, when you think about their most recent hobby release was contrast paints,
Mm.
and actually Marines are probably the worst or the least. How do I word this correctly?
Not as suitable as other
Yeah,
things.
they're
Is
probably
that
the
because
least
they
suitable
didn't need
model.
the help, right?
To get the most out of contrast paints
Yeah.
on. And you do wonder sort of whether there's a big reason for that. You know, they were saying that the Marines are simple. How can we make these other models as accessible? Well, we can't change the model, but perhaps we could change the paints and how we, you know, obviously contrast paints, they're good. They're not revolutionary in the sense of, you know, the idea of washing a saturated thing over a lighter color and you get stuff. Don't get me wrong, but they're presented in such a way to people who can't be asked to go and do all that research and go down some art shop and do this, that, and the other. They just want to chill out and paint some models. Well, they've got contrast paint, so they can do the Orc army now. They can do the Tyrannid army now.
It makes it more accessible to people, and it makes the whole rest of the range. If you've only painted Marines for 10 years because you've tried other models and you just aren't happy with how they look, it's accessible painting now. That's what isn't it? Yeah, it's making more of a balance so that it's not everyone. Yeah, everyone has. I reckon nearly everyone that's been a hobbyist for at least 10 years has a Marine army or has done one in the past. And you know, after that, you then will think, well, actually, now that I've got the contrast paints and there's different ways of painting it, I can go and paint other things as well.
That's it as well. It keeps people painting, right? Which gives them long enough to see other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's that you're not just chucking it in the bin and going on go play Xbox or whatever. You're going, I quite enjoy this paint. I wonder what else there is. Another Marine army. But you know, or maybe something different. What's the next slide, Matt? I think we're onto some vehicles now. Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of look at these as well, because going back to that idea of why would you go elsewhere? You know, once you get into Marines, you know, why go elsewhere? And I think, you know, we do on the Cult of Paint Patreon, we do this Army Painting Plus series where we take a troop type that we've painted on the YouTube videos, and then we look at other key units within that army and how you would paint those units, you know, heroes, monsters, the vehicles, if it's a sci-fi army. And actually with the Marine vehicles, more than any others, I feel, if you can paint a Marine, the jump from painting your troops to your vehicles is not that big. You know, and a dreadnought, particularly the greatest dreadnought ever sculpted, the Death Guard Contemptor dreadnought.
Yeah.
Or should be just the generic Contemptor dreadnought, because that's what everyone should be using it for. Shave the markings off. You know, that's such a small leap from a. You know, if I put that model behind me now, if I put him next to a Primaris Marine, you know, it's even closer. But again, it's that ease of, okay, so maybe I'm going to paint a vehicle and I can learn one or two more different techniques, or it's a different looking thing. You know, there's some mass to it, so on the shelf it looks slightly different, but it's not intimidating. You know, let's say you've just nailed, you know, the paint scheme on 30 Cruel Boys lads. I don't know what they're called.
This is rich in a month's time, right?
Right. And you think, oh, I've broke the back of this army now. I know what I'm doing. Boom. And then I give you the honey badger with alopecia, whatever, that you've got to paint. And you're like, oh god, here we go. Right, now I've got to sit down and work out what on earth I'm meant to do here. You know, and that can be enough to kill a project, can't it? You know.
I can only call it a honey badger now. That's just.
It is actually weirdly accurate. It's like a honey badger / hyena. But yeah, no, but I completely agree with what you're saying. Like, once you've nailed the Marine, any sort of Marine vehicle, specifically dreads and even more Contemptor dreads, are just, it's exactly the same techniques, you know, extrapolated. Especially some armies have got completely different components in it. If you look at like an Eldar army, you go from a Guardian to like a what they call the Fire Dragons or whatever they're called, to the vehicles, Aspect Warriors. That's so much new stuff to learn. That's so much different stuff to learn.
Even though that army is just armored, right? Even though largely it's just armored elves, right, as opposed to armored humans. But there is much more. Yeah.
They are just the next logical step. If you've painted a Marine, you can paint a Contemptor, you can paint a Box Dread, you can paint, once you've painted them, then you can paint a Land Raider, you can paint a Spartan, whatever it is.
Spray can the whole army in one go. That's the best thing about Marine.
As well,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's colouring in.
I suppose that moves on to this, like, if you take a Vindicator, for example, on
Right.
heavy metal Vindicator, you can scale up like a heavy metal Primaris to a Vindicator because it's exactly the same techniques. Yeah, you can move on to that model very quickly and get that endorphin buzz again.
Yeah. It's designed the same way to have those big edges, those big chunky bits that make it easy to paint. So the size might be a bit daunting, how long it takes, but it's exactly the same.
I mean, I remember being like scared of painting a tank like this, which I definitely am not now. But you have to remember, like, I remember doing my Dark Angels as an adult, which is the first thing I painted as a proper adult. And I was like, how the bloody hell am we do this massive tank with Dark Angels green, like, and a size 0?
Oh, yeah.
Chaos black, old Dark Angels green, which was like an ink, and a size 0 brush. That's how I did my tanks. Good times.
Good times. James in the chat, we're going to answer that question quite soon, but just saying, for instance, why aren't other armies as popular? We're going to have a talk around that at the end of the combo, see if we can come up with any reasons that we think's going on. But yes, I think it's that retention, isn't it? And the confidence it's going to give you. Mm-hmm. There's still, we've teach classes to hundreds, if not thousands of people now. We've all got these hobby groups. We are exposed to larger hobby communities because of the internet. I still don't know a huge amount of people that have painted an army, like a full army, not like a little project, or a little force for this. And I bet you a large, and partly that's because I like Heresy, but I bet you a large proportion of those are Marine armies, right? And it's a huge hobby badge, right, to say I've painted a whatever points. I guess it's 2,000. I don't know what 40k is now, but a 2,000 point army. That's a real hobby milestone, to achieve that. And I don't think it's in any way a lesser achievement if it's a Marine army at all. But if you wanted to put money on someone finishing it, other than you, Rich, if you want to put someone money on finishing it, then make it a Marine army. If you want a Marine kill team, Rich is your man.
Honestly, I'm just
smaller than kill team, like Inquisitor. I'm pretty be good at that.
Sorry, man, I'm just projecting. Just
I'm taking it from all angles.
Don't worry.
Unbelievable.
Have we got any more of the vehicle slides, Matt, before Rich hangs up?
I love this one.
Yeah, this was me because it was. I distinctly remember getting into the Heresy thing when the box sets first started coming out, when you were getting plastic Marines, and it was just a natural kind of evolution, wasn't it? Of you can paint a Marine now, you can paint a Contemptor. And I remember when the Leviathan turned up.
Oh, good times.
And I remember the first time I had one, I was like, "Oh my god, this is massive!" And it was so much fun painting it.
And there you go. You've been a Marine fan for what, 10 years before that?
Yeah, at least.
And models come out that's blown your mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ultimately, it's just another Marine Walker. Right?
Yeah.
It is beautiful. It's the best.
It's the best Marine vehicle.
I don't know how many of these I've painted, but it's a fair old few.
I counted the other day. I've painted 5 of these. I've painted 9 Contemptors.
Delicious.
I think I've done five Leviathans or something.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, it's a chunky lad, isn't he?
Great job by Ben on this one. It's awesome.
Yeah. Makes you want to go paint a Leviathan.
Very, very cool. Yeah, there'll be a lot of that. Don't worry. Right, Matt, are we on the last set now?
Yep, so interpretations.
Right. So this is interpretation. So I feel we've sort of spoken about the background and all the rest of it. We've spoken about the model range themselves, and I'm really glad, Andy, you spoke about the just physically putting paint on them. And we didn't even touch on airbrushing. Again, hairy brushing Marines are great. Funnily enough, airbrushing Marines are great as well. So again, they're just a lovely canvas to practice your painting on. But the other side of it, and this goes back, I guess, to what the chat was saying as well, is that a few people in there saying Marines lack creativity. You can't have a gobsmacking Marine army. The only way to make Marines look good is to paint them technically well, and that's that. Marines and Marines and Marines and Marine. So what I thought it'd be interesting was to just take a quick look at a few interpretations of Marines that we've particularly enjoyed. And again, I caveat all of this with we are all massive Space Marine fanboys. I hope we've managed to keep a lid on that, but this is where we can take the lid off. Don't need to be remotely objective, right, about any of this now. You can just have get a bit of a lob on for some space machines. So, what's the first one up, Matt? Whose pick is this?
This is mine. So I think this probably embodies the most, to me anyway, that it's the classic art representation, but it's also probably the most sort of perfect style Marine you can really paint. It's it's executed ridiculously well. It's Darren he's no slouch, but it also comes off of, like, people can say that Marines are boring, like, because there's not enough detail on them, but this kind of proves that you can put detail into the places where you want to put detail. You've got obviously the crest, what's that little shield thing? Freehand. You got the
flame shins, man.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
old school.
You can put as much detail onto a Marine as you want to put onto a Marine. Like,
agree.
It's not really limiting because it's not sculpted on.
Would you like to own this, Matt?
I have it. I just can't face painting it. It's still.
I thought you meant that model.
Oh no, not that model. Oh, that model.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I could convince his brother to give it to me because it was his birthday present, I think. I don't think he will, but.
And I've got another question, which is there any better colour for a plasma pistol than yellow? It's the best.
Well, so this is a wonderful example, right, of a very modern miniature. It's a couple of years old now, but effectively it's the modern Space Marine range. And whilst it's not based, I believe, directly on an original piece of artwork, the sculpt is based on a very, very old Marine model. And the paintwork is very heavily inspired by that second into third edition style. Particularly we saw a lot of those flames on the Blood Angels from that era, and the amazing yellow weapons casings.
Best.
It's so you've got that inspiration. You won't see any modern Marine artwork that looks anything like that, but that hasn't stopped this model being created. Whereas I think it perhaps would be quite hard to, if you got into the hobby now, you would probably paint Eldar or Orcs how you see them painted now, right? You may not know. I can think of some of the great old Space Orcs books I've got up on the shelf there, which have got these awesome, so many interesting schemes and colours on them now. But I would wager the vast majority of hobbyists wouldn't know about them. But even if I got into the hobby right now and I got into Space Marines, I don't think it would take very long to be exposed to the odd old bit of artwork from them. If that makes sense.
Come up quicker, right?
Yeah, it's rad. It's rad. What's up next, Matt? Is this you, Rich?
It is.
Let's go for it.
So this was, I remember seeing this the first time and I was just absolutely blown away by it. Like, it's just insane. Like, it is actually bonkers.
That's worth saying. It's
seeing
big,
it in real life as well.
It's like,
it's massive.
It's like that, right?
Yeah, it's massive. And for me, it encompasses, like, if you look at the artwork and the backstory and all those different things that you can take a Marine to its very sort of limit of what a Marine can be. I think this kind of sums it up for me, because obviously it's a bigger scale, it's its own sculpt, but it's still based. The thing I love about it is if it was just a generic Marine, it would be really cool. But because it's from the artwork, because it's a model that I know with a character whose story that I know, it automatically made me like it loads more. Like, obviously it's an incredible model and it's an incredibly well painted model, but the fact that it lends to that backstory,
but that's like the MiGs thing,
really
right?
Interesting.
That's like the MiGs army you picked, in the sense of, and I don't mean this detrimentally at all to the painter, but they've got a massive amount of currency from work they haven't done, right? They haven't had to create this thing from nothing. You know, they've executed it incredibly well. But on top of that, you know, like you've just said, oh, I know this dude from the story. I know this dude from the art. You know, if I was trying to do it as a generic Marine model from a chapter I'd made up, it's not going to have the same impact, is it? You would just, and perhaps look at it like Matush, I think, was saying in the chat. Then you would probably be judging it more on just technical execution and that's that kind of thing.
And is that why it's a good strategy for Crystal Rush?
Right. I think also just personally for me that immersive. I know so much about Space Marines. It's pretty sad, but that's what I love about them. Like the story, the background, the history of it all. That's the bit I love about it. So when I see a model or an army or a diorama or whatever it is that really kind of makes me remember bits or really makes me want to go back and reread the books that I've read 3 or 4 times. That's what I love about them. That's what I think they're really popped to paint. On top of the fact that you can learn a lot on them and that you can progress on them a lot. It's the things that you can put into it.
Yeah, it's a great choice as well, dude. Like that's one of those seminal Marine pieces, isn't it?
Yeah, that is for me. That's if you wanted to show someone brand new, what's the best Marine thing that's done? It's that.
Yeah, if that was the first Marine model you saw, you're playing Space Wars. You're guaranteed you're playing Space Wars, right? Yeah. It's not, and it's not. I think Space Wars, I think, almost certainly are the most dedicated fan base, you know, or tunnel visioned fan base, right? They love it. Once they've seen them, that's it. Like nothing else matters.
It strikes a chord with the bearded amongst us who lean that Viking-esque way.
That's it. Eh? That's it. I think we've got one more slide, have we, Matt?
2 of yours.
Got a couple more. Oh yeah. So this is a quite a modern take as a project that I believe has only been around maybe 12, maybe 18 months, something like that. It's from an account called Thunderwolfen, and it's a homebrew Space Marine chapter that he's created. The Soul. Oh gosh, I'm going to get this wrong. Haunters, I think. I think it's Haunters, not Hunters. One of the two, anyway. The Soul something. Go and check his account out. It's incredible. But it's just a very, very different take, I think, visually on Marines. He's obviously done a huge amount of work. I just wanted to show one of the greens just so you can see like massive amounts of reposing, quite a lot of sculpting. And one of the biggest things he's done is picked one of the Forge World, I think they're Forge World Blood Angels 30k helmets. Now, you know, when we got the Primaris Marines, so the most recent iteration of Marines, it was a different visual. You know, in spite of it effectively just being a biggerized tactical Marine, a few things did change, right? The silhouette changed ever so slightly. And I feel like just changing the helmet has completely got rid of that sort of what I'd begun to go, okay, that's what a Marine looks like now. That's what a Marine looks like now. Then he bangs a new helmet on, and it's like a completely new model. Could you see the painted version, Matt?
Yep.
And this is just this project, you know, is huge. It's a full army, you know, and every single model has got it's been modelled. There's so much care and love and passion has gone into this project that now I think of this project along with things like Miggs. You know, Miggs's original Space Wolf project he did using Primarch models and things like that. You know, these are the sorts of projects that come to my mind now when I think of, you know, the very best of Marines. Have you got the slide of the last light, Matt, or did you? Is that on there?
I'll have to go back.
So if you can, mate, that'd be wicked. But you know, the last light piece. This, you know, certain pieces now that are just synonymous with, you know, the best of the best of Marines. And I think I'm really glad you picked that one by Darren as well, Matt, because it shows a very different take, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And that was the idea with this section, was just this idea of there is room for interpretation. You know, they're just these smooth spheres and cylinders, you know, with a faceless, you know, helmet on or whatever. Actually, that right back to what we were saying at the start, the fact that they can be these superheroes, these super villains, or just these creepy like superhumans that sit somewhere in the middle. it's just that scope is just enormous with the Marines. So I've been jotting down while we've been chatting about sort of what we thought of it of each section, and this is what I feel like we've come to the conclusion of. So correct me if I'm wrong on this. So why are Space Marines so good to paint? Right? Why do we love painting them so much? So it's easy to immerse yourself in it. It's very easy to find inspiration. The miniatures themselves are very simple, which therefore gives you a blank canvas to work from, but also is not intimidating to start with. Right? That fair?
Yeah.
Pretty much sums up.
And unfortunately, I guess the answer to the question we had earlier about, okay, so why aren't Eldar the same? You know, they're relatively smooth armor, you know, humanoid, all the rest of it. Why aren't they as popular? I mean, to me, they don't tick all of those boxes, right? All of the other ranges tick one or two of those boxes, but no one ticks them all, right? And then gives you 1,000 models to choose from, or whatever it is. Whatever. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you know? Is there? Do you think GW will try and bring other ranges up to be as accessible or as popular as Marines? Do you think that ship has sailed? I mean, look at that recent Necron range. Incredible, like complete revamp, beautiful, simple to paint, but the background for them has changed a lot over the years, right?
Yeah,
it's not been consistent.
And they're together human, right? So like, yeah, Necrons are easier to paint, but they're not human. So you were all saying, and it's different for me, but that it's the fact that they're humans. So that's one of the reasons why they're the most successful, and Necrons probably couldn't compete really. Everyone loves Terminator, but not as much as they love, you know, humans, human race, and all that stuff. Yeah. I just think they'll be hard to top, which isn't a bad thing really, but they're still bringing up all the other models to be as good to paint, as well developed. It's just Marines are just, it's hard to top, you know, that monopoly really, isn't it?
I think also they've been going for so long now that it would take they would have to put so much more effort into a new, if they just randomly pick one of the races or created a new one and said, right, this will be as big as Marines, you'd need 30 years.
What do you think about the Sisters of Battle? Because, I mean, to me, that's not far off now, right? You have a very big range. You have a lot of lore, obviously not 30 plus, but you've got best part of 20 years of lore, of background for them now. Tons of great artwork. They're human. So, again, you've got that easy to identify kind of thing, or easier to identify than say a termagant or whatever. I could see them becoming more and more up there with a sort of a, like if I'm sat here now, right, and you give me a choice between painting a Primaris Intercessor and a Sister of Battle, it's close, right? It's closer than an Orc boy from 20 years ago. It's closer than an Eldar Guardian model. It's closer than a Tyranid model. But there is still little barriers, right? Little barriers. The tabards, and I've got to paint cloth. I can't just, bang the airbrush over it. So I get that. I do get that. But I think it's going to be interesting to see, because I think they obviously want to create a different big bad, right? We seem to have got a different enemy in nearly every edition of the game. Is it Orcs? Is it Chaos? Chaos is just Marines again, right? Is it Necrons, which they tried with this most recent? So I think that the passion's there, right? The passion is there. So.
With Sisters, I think they are, like you said, they are close. But you're right; they're just not quite, because they're superhuman to a degree, but I don't know. There's just something that this is massively just a personal thing. There's just something that I just can't quite get on board with. That I like them.
Isn't it? It would be like all these like the second one you collect in your hobby career.
Mm-hmm.
I want Sisters. Like I would rather do Sisters now than Marines if I did a new army. I really want the big gold suit, big time. But like if I was joining the hobby now, you'd just go on Marines, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, even down to the fact, if you look at the Sisters, it's like, look at all the faces, bare faces you've got to paint.
yeah,
Everyone's got a helmet.
barriers to entry.
Brilliant.
Not if you glued all helmets on mine like I have.
Well, true.
But no, I think I think right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that chat, chaps, and everyone in the chat. I think it's probably something you could talk about a lot longer, but I didn't want to. We've already gone on longer than we normally do on the main segment. But I think as I said at the start, with this hobby, very few people haven't been exposed to Space Marines or haven't painted a Space Marine. And I thought it would be interesting to have a little chat around perhaps just why. So I hope we've at least given some food for thought there with that side of things. So let's move on to closing the show out with our usual hashtag paint cultists. When we started the show, we wanted a little hashtag for people that listen to the show and want to share their work with us to use, and that is hashtag paint cultists. Go and follow it on Instagram. There's thousands of things on there now, all sorts of different models. And generally what I do is pick a handful of them each show to show the guys. But it's just awesome to sit and flick through what you've all been up to with it. And I say it every time, I'm so impressed with the breadth of the miniatures that we get to see on it. It's so lovely to see this miniatures painting community becoming less tribal, I guess, in a way. It's so nice. People just love painting. They don't care if you like Ultramarines or whatever. If you like painting, right, you're in. Right, let's go with it. So let's have a look, Matt. What we got at first. This one's for you, Andy. I know you love a bit of tentacle. Busts. We obviously ran the recent miniature painting open. Got a lot of interest in the bust category. A lot of people saying things like, I had no idea there was all these different ones out there and stuff. Well, there's some in for everyone. And this one, I believe, was one of these Patreon print things, where you get X amount of files a month from doing it. And just this creepy ass Cthulhu type sorcerer there. So yeah, very, very nice.
Very cool.
I particularly like is it sackcloth? Hard to tell. Looks like skin almost, doesn't it? Like snake skin round by his hood. But yeah, very tasty. What's the next one, Matt?
That's cool.
I thought you'd dig this one just because the lighting's pretty bonkers, right? And that's one of Andy's favourite miniatures of recent times.
Yeah, Corvus Commander.
Corvus.
And that's my favourite one out the set.
There we go.
He's the best.
So I think we featured this account before, actually. Now I've seen the name, but yeah, it really did stand out, this one. So lovely to see. I also haven't picked any Marines, by the way, for this.
I thought it was going to be all Marines.
All right. No, I was like, it's just a little palette cleanser, right?
I thought it was going to be Marines special.
At the end. And again, guys, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds since the last show. I'm just picking. I go through and I just pick a handful that sort of caught my eye in the thing. So what we got up next, Matt?
Yeah.
Modoc.
Is that any good? Have you ever watched that yet?
Oh, I don't know anything about it. The only reason I know Modoc, mate, is because my favourite band sings songs about him. But from what I can gather, this Marvel Crisis Protocol, I think is what it's called, really is gaining in popularity.
It was on South Park, man.
Was it? Right. So,
There's a film or a TV show coming out that's based on him or something.
Right. No idea. I mean, but he's a creepy looking dude for sure. But it's there's more and more Marvel stuff. And it must be this Crisis Protocol game. It must be. Like we saw again in the MPO, we saw a bunch of entries from it, and they do stand out. I think the thing in the past that stood in a world of GW models, which is generally, if you look at painting online, that's what you're looking at, right? It's mainly either large scale or it's GW stuff. The only stuff that ever really sort of had a strong aesthetic that was different was the Infinity models, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they'd stand out because they were so different. Well, I feel like now it's the Marvel stuff. I feel like I'm seeing more of that now popping up and even just painters that are like, I just wanted to paint one Iron Man model,
big IP that we all know, just like Marines, isn't it?
This has got to be like, if anything could rival, it needs to be a big dog like the Marvel sort of background, doesn't it?
They are cranking out the miniatures. There's so many of them on Instagram these days, and all like the cribby, chibi type things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, Adam, the band is Monster Magnet. Adam, enjoy. Incredible band. Sorry, right. Next slide, please, Matt.
Yeah.
I had to pop this one in. We've definitely featured Martin's work before, but he posted something on Twitter I saw the other day where he'd done one of those look back through the models he'd painted over his time in the hobby, and it was just really nice to see someone who clearly puts a massive amount of effort into the hobby, and has sort of applied themselves to, I am going to improve at painting. And it's always been elves, really, with a few little detours. And for him to be able, but for him to be able to have this model now on his shelf, to be able to just, it must feel awesome, right? It must feel absolutely awesome to know that you own one of your favorite interpretations of a particular model, right, or a thing like that. That must feel pretty cool. I thought you'd like that one, Andy.
Purple High Elves, come on.
It's low hanging fruit for you, right?
Got to keep the purple Power Ranger happy.
But yeah, and I think we've got one more slide. Is that right, Matt? Oh, and this one,
cool.
I just really like the colours. I thought it was really cool, like that sort of orangey. That's orange to me, anyway.
We don't see enough orange Marines, orange Eldars.
We don't, right?
There's not enough orange.
Too hard.
That's an episode.
I wonder why. Yeah, I'll jot that down.
Why not orange?
Orange and yellow.
There's loads of yellow.
You see loads of yellow, though, don't
This, Iandon, orange, nothing. No official schemes.
I say loads of yellow. You see loads of yellow if all you look at's Horus Heresy stuff. For sure. But yeah, just a really nice work on this one. And if you enjoy this, I know this account's got, I went and had a look at the account. It's got a bunch more Eldar on there that they're working on.
Eldar, release. Let's go. Come on.
So, as I say, that was just a snapshot of some of the work that you can see using the hashtag Paint Cultist. So I think that's the end of the show, gents. Thanks ever so much for chatting through. I hope you enjoyed it. I know we're all big fanboys of the Marines, but it's nice to have a bit more of a, I think a sort of slightly higher brow chat around them. And I think we did well not to devolve into the sort of subjective fanboyism or whatever. That's always a risk. Thanks very much to the chat for joining us. Normally we record these shows and the live audience is our patrons, as they're able to interact with us. And we thought we'd do the odd public one as well, particularly with this sort of episode, which has got, we think, a much broader scope with stuff as well. So thanks. They're still, they don't care. The chat's talking about Doctor Strange, whatever that is.
Marvel, mate. Come on.
And some other stuff. So yeah, glad those guys are enjoying it. Thanks very much if you're watching us live, and thanks very much if you're watching us back at this recording. If there's any subjects that you'd like us to touch on or have a chat about, or miniatures you'd like us to take a look at, get in touch. We're on all the usual social medias, email, all that sort of thing. It's not hard. Everybody knows how to get in touch with everyone nowadays. We will see you in a couple of weeks' time for the next episode 11. Now we're old hats now, right? It's just whatever, just smash these out. But we hope you're all enjoying watching and listening to us. I know we're really enjoying doing this podcast or vidcast or whatever on earth you want to call it. So thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time.